Good morning and welcome to Trade Talks. I'm your host, Joe Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq, and we're in the thick of earnings season, which means we're going to take a look at sector shakers. And joining me is Evan Schnidman. He is the founder and CEO of Prattle and managing director over at Nasdaq, Michael Marks. Thank you both for joining me here today. So let's talk about the latest data set from Prattle in the Nasdaq Analytics Hub.
Yeah, so we're now analyzing equities. So we've actually built a unique data set analyzing the sentiment of every earnings call from every publicly traded company in the United States. We've built out a unique lexicon for each and every individual company. We're able to identify the sentiment expressed on those calls and identify how that relates to market response. In fact, what gets really interesting is we can even break that down to the individual speaker level. So corporate officers and analysts, we can identify the sentiment they're expressing on the earnings call in both prepared remarks and in the Q&A.
Oh, wow. So how can investment managers use the breadth of this corporate earnings data to uncover underlying movement in equities?
So it's really interesting. Right now, what we're finding is that we can actually use this information both to glean short-term information from how that investment signal is going to work over the next couple of days, to aggregating all the way up to sector-level information for weeks, months, even into several quarters out.
That makes the job a lot easier for analysts, for sure.
Sure does.
Wow. All right, and so Michael, talk to me about Nasdaq Total View and why depth gives a greater view of the best bid and offer.
Sure. So we talked about breadth of data. Total View is all about depth. This is where we see the full Nasdaq order book. So if you think of traditional level one, best bid and offer information, there's plenty that occurs lower down in the order book. On level one, you might see a firm price for a stock, and that is good for 100 shares, but let's say you've got 500 shares you'd like to unload. You need to see the price points lower down to see if it's worth exiting that particular stock or not. So that's where Total View comes in, and I would say this is a service that is used by the most sophisticated traders out there, as well as tens of thousands of retail investors who gain access through their online brokerage platforms.
So how could a trader potentially use both Total View and the Analytics Hub together?
So if you consider Total View as traditional market data, we then bring in the alternative market data, the alternative data sets such as Prattle. This is another input into a trader's algorithm. Okay, they're looking perhaps at more fundamental stuff, then they're looking at some of the newer data sets that are available in there. Using things like natural language processing, some kind of sentiment which is going to give a different spin on a particular trade and whether they should get in or out. It's not purely based around fundamentals, but there's a different nuance that somebody might pick up. So if you look at right now in earnings season, what you get with Total View is something called net order imbalance. This sets the opening and closing price for stocks on Nasdaq. Imagine company A has put out earnings just after market close. You come in the next morning, 2 minutes prior to the open, you see the net order imbalance, right? Is there an imbalance between buyers and sellers? If so, how does that look? Is it worth me getting in or out? But I might want to marry with that the kind of information I get from Prattle, which is going to find more subtle nuances in perhaps an earnings call text, and I can be more informed when I make my trade.
All right, and Evan, let me ask you this. What are the hottest sectors this earnings season based on Prattle data within the hub?
Yeah, so far, I mean, we're still early in earnings season, but so far, consumer staples is actually looking pretty strong across micro caps all the way up to large caps. What we're seeing is a little interesting in telecom, a little softer there, and especially driven by the micro caps not looking quite as strong on the sentiment side. So it'll be interesting to see how the rest of earnings season plays out. We're seeing some interesting distribution, maybe some players sitting on cash that are starting to see some more interest in the micro cap world, and sentiment by and large has actually picked up there, with the exception of that telecom sector.
All right, well, thank you both for joining us today, and thank you for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq.